Why you're here.
Someone will leave happy.
Who's going to get the dog? You want to go get the dog?
And someone
Put the dog down. Put the dog down.
will leave.
Judge Judy is a courtroom TV show. In it, Judge Judy, who is a lawyer of 38 years, examines evidence from the plaintiff, the one suing, and the defendant, the one being sued. After talking to witnesses, examining evidence, etc., she decides who to rule in favor of. Welcome to Film Focus. In this video, we're going over 10 wow moments on Judge Judy. Before we begin, remember to drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and wait to find out what happens in number 1. Number 10. Judge Judy says the law doesn't give a rat's ass. In this case, the defendant had filed an emergency protective order for himself against the plaintiff. The order made it so that the plaintiff couldn't go to work anymore, since they worked together. Judge Judy then asked him what concrete reason he filed the order. He kept explaining that he felt threatened or felt a certain way, but no actual instances where it was clear that he needed a protective order. With that, Judge Judy got angry and explained to him that the law doesn't give a rat's ass about how he feels, and that he abused the system. She explains that you can't just go around filing restraining orders, especially ones that put people out of a job, just because you feel a certain way. You need a specific, concrete, and physical reason. With all this in mind, you really don't want to get on her bad side.
You asked for, excluding him from your workplace, and I guarantee you, on Bird's life, he was a moron.
The judge suspended it. He didn't issue a restraining. He didn't issue a permanent restraining order.
No. You asked for. That's not what I'm saying to you, sir.
Number 9. Judge Judy kicks out a random audience member. In the middle of a random episode, Judge Judy makes a remark that gets laughter from the audience. A few moments later, she makes another remark, prompting yet another burst of laughter from the audience. However, this time, she stares down a certain audience member in anger. She called out to the man and told him to get out. She never mentioned why, so we're just left to assume that he laughed a little too loudly for her liking. You can tell this guy is very shocked by this, as you can see his embarrassment and surprise written all over his face.
You got my eyes? Blue, black, out. Out.
Yeah.
It would be you. Out. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's not life, Mr. Cuffy. It's what a...
Number 8. Group destroys property and then posts about it. In this case, a group of kids saw a Confederate flag on a random truck and decided to do something about it. They took the flag off of the truck and peed on it. After that, they decided to throw the flag back on the truck, and somewhere in the process, the truck ended up getting scratched. They then made the genius decision to post about it on social media, making it very easy for the truck's owner to find out who did it. So the truck's owner took them to court and sued them for damages. There was barely even a case, as it was crystal clear that they had done it. Despite this, they were still constantly smirking and chuckling at what had happened, and at the end, of course, they were ordered to pay for damages. Regardless of what you might think of this, since it was a Confederate flag, come on guys, really, posting about it on social media, why would that ever be a good idea?
I'm going to ask you again. What was the name of the person who suggested that it would be fun to urinate on the Confederate flag? You may disagree with the statement, but the response to that is not to vandalize somebody else's property.
Number 7. Plaintiff tries to sue for a defendant using the toilet. In this case, the plaintiff was having a get-together with some friends, and the defendant went to use the bathroom. While going to the restroom, she said that she heard a sound and discovered that it had cracked. The plaintiff wanted the defendant to pay for the repairs. However, since there's always the possibility that the toilet maybe just wore out, mixed with the fact that it was completely unintentional, there was really no reason to rule in the plaintiff's favor. However, the plaintiff simply wasn't getting the message, and that led to Judge Judy yelling at her, trying to explain that the defendant can't be held responsible for what happened. She finished by telling the plaintiff to grow up while starting to walk away.
27-year-old healthcare aide Lisa Reed is suing her former friend, house cleaner Barbara Loth, for breaking her toilet when she sat on it.
Miss Reed broke while she was using it. That's different than she broke the toilet. The toilet broke while she was using it.
Number 6. Woman takes a loan with no intention of paying it back. In this case, the plaintiff, who's named Lee, loaned the defendant, who was named Erica, $2,000 because she was going through a move and tough times. Lee made it clear that it was a loan, meaning that Erica had to pay it back. Erica agreed and took the $2,000. However, when Lee asked for the return, Erica refused and Lee decided to take it to court. While on Judge Judy, Erica claimed that it wasn't a loan and that Lee said she never needed to repay it. The crazy part of this episode, Erica then went on a rant about how Lee worked, only had 2 kids, and her husband drove a BMW and had house cleaners every week. This made it clear that it was definitely a loan and that Erica just never intended to pay it back because she somehow believed that Lee was rich and she was entitled to some of her money. Jeez, talk about a leech of a friend.
And her house needed some work on it before they'd be able to rent it out. So she came over to my house. This was the...
Were you neighbors?
Well, no, we lived about half an hour.
And they have childcare, and they have weekly house cleanings, and you don't sound like an unintelligent woman, Miss.
Number 5. A man threatens Judge Judy and then can't figure out how to leave. In this clip, 4 men and Judge Judy were arguing over what requirements there should be for you to own a gun. One of the men is arguing too much, so she kicks him out and makes him pay the chunk of what they're being sued for. As he's getting kicked out, Judge Judy makes a remark about how he is an aggressive and nasty person. While she's talking, another one of the men quietly says, "You better watch him. You never know what people will do these days." While Judge Judy seems to disregard it, in the context of talking about guns, it seemed like a really bad comment to make. Not long after, he ended up getting kicked out as well for talking too much and arguing. On his way out, Judge Judy comments how there needs to be more tests in order to own a gun. The man fired back with, "There should be a test to be a judge," and tries to pull on a push door. He then takes a few seconds to realize that it's a push door, and as he's walking out, he restates that there should be a test to be a judge. I mean, has this guy never heard of the bar exam?
Listen to me. Because he has a big mouth, I'm awarding you a judgment against him for $450. Now you can take your blue shirt and go outside, and I'll deal with the rest of them. I'm aggressive and nasty.
Better watch them.
Aggressive and nasty.
I know what people do these days.
Well, aggressive and nasty. Can't account for any other reason for him to be aggressive. I have to tell you something. You
Push.
out.
Take the test to be a judge.
Number 4. Man seems proud of speeding. In this clip, a man is talking about the amount of times that he's been caught speeding. He almost proudly says that he's been caught speeding 11 times, and he reacts with absolutely no empathy or regret for what he had done. So Judge Judy goes off and talks about how dangerous his behavior is. She describes how one day he's going to end up killing someone with his bad tendencies. She concludes by saying once he inevitably does end up hurting or killing someone, she wants this exact tape to be played to show how carefree he was about it. If he doesn't end up learning from his mistakes, it's only fair that this episode does come back to bite him.
And I put you in for a year. Because, Mr. McAdams, I'm putting the state of Texas on notice, and you live in Humboldt, Texas?
Humble, yes, ma'am.
That you're going to put you on notice, jurisdiction where this smart guy lives. He doesn't respect your law, and he one day is going to cause some damage to somebody.
Number 3. Judge Judy gives dog back to his rightful owner. In this trial, a woman had found a lost dog and decided to keep him. When the original owners tried to get the dog back, the woman refused, claiming that it wasn't the right dog. It was a pretty generic looking dog, so it could have been difficult to determine if it really was the right dog. However, the dog was brought into the courtroom, and when the dog was brought out, he was staring at the original owners. Judge Judy told them to put the dog down, but the woman who found him continually said, "Don't put him down," as her daughter was the one actually holding the dog. However, of course, the daughter eventually has to put him down, and the second she did, the dog charged right into the arms of the original owners, and that was more than enough for Judge Judy to rule in favor of the original owners.
That's why you're here.
Someone will leave happy,
Who's going to get the dog? You want to go get the dog?
and someone
Put the dog down. Put the dog down.
will leave.
Hey, boy. Hey there. That's baby boy.
Pick him up.
That's baby boy. Come on, Mark. Come here. That's baby boy. Oh.
Number 2. Defendant's mom doesn't even believe him. In the clip, the defendant is trying to claim that he never bought a car that was the reason for the lawsuit. He kept making the argument that since he was homeless, there was no way that he could have afforded to buy a car. On the paperwork for the car, the defendant had signed with his very childlike and poor print. He kept insisting that he never bought the car and that someone had to have forged his signature. However, on the paperwork for the show, in which he had to agree to certain terms, his signature was the exact same as it was on the paperwork for the car. Therefore, the chances of it being forged are extremely slim, especially considering how unique his signature is. Judge Judy then proceeds to ask him again if he had bought the car, and when the man still refuses to admit to buying the car, the camera panned over to his mom, who was laughing. Must hurt to not even have your mom believing your lies.
Signature. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. So you purchased the car from Mr. Galimba.
No, ma'am.
Well, she doesn't want you to look any more foolish than you do now, do you?
No.
Perfect. So I'm going to ask you again. When did you...
Number 1. Judge Judy kicks out 3 witnesses. During the questioning process of the plaintiff and the defendant, witnesses from both sides speak up multiple times, sometimes completely interrupting someone's sentence. After a few instances where they try to speak over her, insert their opinion without being asked, or even try to raise their hand to interject, she kicks them out one by one. The last one to get kicked out even had to be escorted by the officer. I mean, come on. Have they never watched Judge Judy? How did none of them know that they would never get away with interjecting whenever they wanted? Judge Judy is way too strict to let anyone talk whenever.
I said people just don't stand up here.
She was able to drive the car the whole time.
Listen to me. Just out. Thank you very much. It's getting more orderly here by the moment.
Seem to be doing a great job.
She let him drive it. She knew he was going to drive it.
Out.
I'm going out, but it's all wrong.
Good, he's going out.
That was our list of 10 wow moments on Judge Judy. What did you think of the list? Which did you think was the craziest? Let us know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching Film Focus.